I would like to direct your attention, please, to two scores from this weekend that you probably didn't watch a lot of. Maybe you were checking out the early window and saw that Texas was beating up on Florida, and then you overlooked it. And then as the day progressed, you weren't really that interested in Penn State playing Washington anyway, because Washington was never going to hang around with Penn State and all these sorts of things. Okay. So I thought Texas would cover 21.5. They did. I thought Washington would cover 13.5. They did not. I'm going to talk about both these games. Let's start with Texas and Florida. 49-17, the final score. 19 of 27 was Quinn Ewers for 333 yards and 5 touchdowns. And I tell you what, Steve Sarkisian put on another play calling masterclass on Saturday, because some of the concepts that he comes up with, a fake reverse, fake counter, reverse with the initial fake reverse as the lead blocker, I could watch that like Tom Haverford in Parks and Recreation. I could stare at it for 5 hours and just watch it over and over and over again. The screens he's got, the way he uses motion, that was the Texas offense at its finest. They have faced questions at points this season. Why? Because they haven't always been very good. I watched them play Georgia, who didn't look very good, again, on Saturday. And Texas didn't look great, and they couldn't move it on offense. And Quinn had to be taken out for a little while to put in Arch Manning, just, I think, to give him a rest, to give him a break and let him recoup his thoughts, which he did, and led a couple of scoring drives. You may be saying to yourself, Spencer, Florida isn't any good. Florida's not any good. Okay, Florida's not great. Florida's not terrible. If DJ Lagway had been able to play, that was always a smokescreen. For those that don't know, there were some reports flying around. Well, DJ Lagway could play. Like, guys, he was carted off last week. Let's pump the brakes. His season, unfortunately, is done. But Billy Napier is keeping his job, much to the chagrin of many in Gainesville. But Texas, the last time they took the field, put up 27 points against Vanderbilt. They won the game by 3. They lost to Georgia by 15 points at home, but they didn't score a point in that first half. So the last 2 times we've seen the Texas offense, and frankly, though the box score is impressive at a glance, 34-3 against Oklahoma, people who watched the Red River shootout know that was not a particularly impressive performance from Quinn Ewers, but this was dialed in. This was the Quinn Ewers that makes me look at Texas and say, yeah, they're making the college football playoff. So Texas being a lock to the playoff isn't a guarantee per se. They've got Arkansas on the road this week. I hope you don't overlook the Hogs if you were Texas. In a classic SEC showdown, I hope you don't overlook the Hogs. Kentucky at home, not as worried there. And then Texas A&M the last week of the regular season. I will confess, I have nothing against you, Arkansas or Kentucky. I have absolutely nothing against either of you, though I suspect both fan bases are looking ahead to basketball season a little bit. I want Texas to win both of those football games and set up a showdown at Kyle Field last week of the regular season. I want it. I want it so incredibly bad, because that would be a Utah BYU level spectacle where it has the opportunity to capture the nation's attention and then catapult that rivalry into a new stratosphere, because everyone realizes, hey, this is a really great rivalry. And when I don't have a dog in the fight, I love rivalries. So, speaking of dogs, a strong, passionate, rest easy to Ben Herbstreit. Was tough to watch Kirk Herbstreit on Saturday morning. That guy is the consummate professional for even showing up to work. If I'd lost my dog, as I did 3.5 years ago, and been asked to show up to work and go on college game day the next day, after that experience with a dog, taking him around and the country falling in love with it, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Props to Kirk Herbstreit for showing up. I wanted to get that out there. But back to Texas here. At 10-2, Texas is probably in. They don't actually have a great win that's holding up right now. Oklahoma lost to Missouri. That was not a very good loss. They lost to Georgia. Vanderbilt's no longer in the top 25. So Texas is back to what the committee was downgrading them slightly against Oregon in the rankings in the lead up to conference championship weekend last year. They're back to that area of, hey, when we play inferior opponents, we tend to beat them really badly. They could use that against Arkansas and Kentucky here, given the 3-point loss to Vanderbilt, who's going to be a bowl team this year, but also got housed on their home field by South Carolina. Nice game for the Gamecocks and Shane Beamer there. But Texas doesn't have a great win. So if they were to lose at Texas A&M, and they've lost the only games on their schedule at the end of the year that are against ranked opponents, I think 10-2 SEC'd be in. But of the 10-2 resumes, that's a lot closer to Missouri than it would be Florida's schedule. It's a lot closer to, so it could get dicey, is all I am saying. So Texas impressed me, but they still have more work to do. Penn State, on the other hand, impressed me a lot. Going into this game, I had this as, hey, Washington can hang around. They can do it. No, they can't. No, they cannot. That Penn State defense showed up, held Washington to 6 points, absolutely dominated. Drew Aller looked great. Andy Kotelnicki was in his bag as the offensive coordinator, dialing up plays for Tyler Warren, and Drew Aller looked good. There were a lot of things going right for Penn State in this game. I'm not using this game as an opportunity to expunge the memories of the Ohio State matchup in which they lost by 7, but very easily could have lost by more, just as easily could have won the football game. Such is the way of life. Penn State, to me, is more of a lock to the playoff than Texas for 2 reasons. Number one, the schedule factor that I mentioned with the Longhorns. But number 2, Penn State doesn't have a game on their schedule where they won't be favored. Now, they have to go at Minnesota. And most people have not paid attention to PJ Fleck. They're not rowing the boat at a ferocious speed, but it's moving. It's going forward a little bit. They have to go to Minnesota in a couple weeks. They're at Purdue this week. That's barely a football team at this point. I don't know if Ryan Walters will make it to next season because there's a real possibility that Purdue is 1-11 after a 4-8 first year. That's going in the wrong direction there. So at Purdue, at Minnesota, host Maryland. Not worried about Maryland at home. Not worried about Purdue. It'll come down to Minnesota. Because again, I look at both of these teams, Penn State and Texas, and before the year, if you'd said, hey, Spencer, this team's going to go 10-2. Well, it's 10-2 Big Ten. It's 10-2 SEC. They're surely going to get in. Yeah, except there are more 10-2 SEC teams than we know what to do with. What if Texas loses to Texas A&M and Texas A&M is a 10-2 team, and Ole Miss could be 10-2, and Georgia could be 10-2? Just ask yourself this question, Penn State: how confident are you that wins at West Virginia, at USC, and at Wisconsin, with a 1-possession loss at home to Ohio State and a win against Illinois as well at home? How confident are you that a 10-2 schedule there with a loss at Minnesota, who would probably be ranked if they win that game after the fact, how confident are you that you're getting in over 10-2 SEC? Because we could see a real lineup here. Bama, best case scenario and most likely scenario, is 10-2. They've got a cupcake, Oklahoma, and Auburn. I think Alabama goes 3-0 in those spots. 10-2, they're going to be in the playoff. There's an at-large spot. What about Notre Dame? Notre Dame has got USC the last week of the regular season, but they still have just the 1 loss. And Notre Dame took Florida State to the woodshed because Florida State is legitimately the worst preseason top 10 team I have ever seen. They could end the year 1-11. They legitimately could. I have no faith in them to win any game without even looking at their schedule. They've got Florida on it. I bet you Florida houses them with a 3rd-string quarterback. Florida State is just god-awful. Just a horrifically bad team. Don't watch them. Don't watch them. It's just bad for your eyes at this point. So there are a lot of things to be decided, and I'm curious to see how the playoff rankings come out on Tuesday, as I always am. But Penn State and Texas, these are 2 teams that did better. Well, Texas did what I expected. Penn State exceeded my expectations. That's a lean win for Penn State. No vibe on the whole for Texas, but some good vibes can go down to Austin because of the way that Quinn Ewers looked. And I know Florida didn't have their starting quarterback. Last I checked, he doesn't play defense. And that Florida defense has had some moments in the last couple of weeks. Texas looked like Texas again. Penn State looked like a good version of themselves. Which of those 10-2 teams do you think is more likely to miss the playoff? I think the answer is Penn State because of the SEC factor. But frankly, either one of them could. I'm just saying.